Good afternoon and welcome to this very special edition of GRIDtalk, feature focus on Gantt. So just a couple of pieces of housekeeping before we jump into our main demonstration. Down on the bottom right, you'll see a couple of options for chat, also for questions. So we will be having a Q&A at the end to go over any questions you have about our new Gantt feature. So please feel free in the questions section to pop in any burning questions you have on our new feature. Also, under the polls section, we have a poll set up for you to have a look at what features might be important for you for us to release in our upcoming sprints on Gantt. Also, this is one of many episodes of GRIDtalk, so if you would like to catch up on any of our other episodes, featuring things like building out world-class playbooks, case studies from clients, and also a deep dive into our AI features, please feel free to pop over to our website, and under our resources, you can catch all of those episodes on demand. So joining me today on our GRIDtalk is our Chief Product Officer, Jody. Jody is going to be showing you through our full demonstration of the Gantt feature. So over to you, Jody.
Hello, welcome everyone. I'm going to take you through the new Gantt feature. Hopefully you can all see my screen. It's being shared. I'm going to try and step through a possible process you might go through from having a master project grid to cloning it and going through and using all the scheduling tools. There's a lot of features to get through, so I'm just going to move through it. Hopefully it's sort of 10 to 15 minutes long, and then we leave the other 15 minutes for any questions you might have. So as Rachel said, if you've got any questions as I go along, just post those in that questions area. So here are some master grids I've got. This is just our project and program management grid that's available in the grid store. You can download this for free if you want it into your account. So I'm going to use this as a base master to show you the Gantt. Just to quickly explain, if anyone's sort of new to Method Grid, in the grid we've got elements, and these contain our knowledge. So in this element, I've got some purpose about client scorecard objectives. I've got a task list. I can have experts and links off to the templates, things like that. So that's all still there. So all my knowledge and methodology is here. This is broken down into the stages, which would be the time scale. So they'll be important for the Gantt. And then themes can be broken down by the type of work it is or whatever you want to do there. I was just noting on that because in the Gantt, that's important. So at the bottom of the Gantt, we've got tasks, and their parent would be elements, or you can also have tasks in stage gates. And then up from tasks, you've got the element, and their container is stages, and the stages are contained in the grid. So if I open up the Gantt, and to do that, that's just here. These are the grid tools. This will load the Gantt. So you'll see here, I can move this side to side. This is where the chart would appear. This is my Gantt table. I can double click on these to maximize it. And you can see here, that was the element I was just in. Those are the three tasks. Its parent is the element. The element's parent is the stage. And then I'm in the grid. So that is the basic structure of a Gantt: tasks to element or gate to stage. And then we have a full Gantt scheduling engine here in the table. So I'm just going to show you how you can add a few durations, and then I'll skip to one that I prepared earlier. Just to say, you'll notice here I've got a guidance stage. This had lots of elements in it. These are all set to be information only. So if I want to exclude this element, I can simply set it to information only. It's now not a deliverable element, and it will be removed from the Gantt. So only things that you want to be able to schedule can be shown in the Gantt, and you do that at the element level. So in here, you see I've got a table. This is where the Gantt will appear. I can just show the table by clicking that, bring it back, or I can just show the chart by clicking that. If I just show the table, I could start to add durations for these tasks. Perhaps this takes 7 days, 5 days, etc. I'm just putting these in. Those now got durations in. I can also add dependencies between anything in here. I can add dependencies task to element, task to task, stage to stage. Just to show you an example, I'm going to add them stage to stage, but I can do that in the chart or in the table. I can collapse all these items if there's too many on show, or I can show them all. So up here, if I want initiations predecessor to be startup, I can just simply put in the order number here and it's set that here. So here's my order number. So the element is 2, 1, this is 2. And I put initiations predecessor as 2, the startup stage. And you could see how I could keep going through that and adding durations, but I'm not going to do that all in here. I'm going to skip to the same grid, which I prepared earlier, classic phase. And in here, it's the same grid we saw before, but in here, I've set up every single task to have a duration. So if this was my master grid, I've set up all my tasks, I've got all my knowledge. I can then set durations to these tasks so that when I clone the grid, those durations will come with it and I can instantly schedule it. Just to collapse them all and show you, we've got all the successors and predecessors set just very simply between stage initially.
So those dependencies there, Jody, they will clone across as well with your master?
They will clone across, yep. So it will keep all durations. So let me expand one of those again, right down at the task level. So I want to say that the way that it inherits in a Gantt, it's going to take, the durations will go up to the element. So this element will have duration of 4 days and so on, it will go up. And when I clone it and put in a start date, we'll see that all happen automatically. So for the purposes of this, I've just made some simple predecessor-successor relationship between the stages, just at the stage level. Mm-hmm. But now, if I go to clone this grid with the elements and everything in it, as well as all the knowledge, it's going to bring across my scheduling information as well. So it will clone all the knowledge and everything in the elements. It will keep the durations on all the tasks, and it will keep any dependencies I've set. So I can now say, this is my delivery. This is going to be project 2. And it's all set to go. So just to remind you, all the knowledge has come across with it. So I've got all my tasks there and I can start to assign these out to people as I wish. All the information is still there. The experts have come across all the templates. So everything that it used to do before is all still there. All the knowledge has come across. But crucially for this demo, in the Gantt, it's also kept all those durations that I set and all the predecessor successors. So if I bring this back now, if this is now ready to go, I could go in and tweak those before I do this, but I can tweak this at any point. I can schedule at any point. If I now say, well, I want this project to start, and this is the grid start date on the 1st of November, it now instantly schedules everything in this Gantt. This button here is very useful. Zoom to fit will show the full time scale. So it's taken every duration all the way down here, and it now knows, well, if this can start on the 1st, I can have that go up into the parents, just as you would expect to see in a Gantt. But you can see I have essentially instantly scheduled this master grid ready to go. I'll take you through the controls.
Very quick.
Very, very quick, yeah. So just a quick reminder of these buttons. So this is expand all if you want to see them all and shrink them all. You can do it one by one as well. So I can just shrink the startup stage, or I can shrink these. You can move those up and down. I'm showing some timescales up here, but you can zoom in and out to show different timescales. And then clicking this will attempt to fit everything into this viewable area so you can see it all at once. In the table mode, I can also sort. So I can sort by end date if I want. And that's just sorting in here. So if I return to the grid, that sort has no impact on the layout of your actual knowledge methodology. It's just sorting it in the Gantt. And when you come back, it will reset. So I could sort it by due date. And you can sort it by anything you want. Any of these columns can be sorted. And I can just go back to my original order by sorting the order. And you also saw me do this, but if you double click, a bit like Excel, if you double click at the corner, it's going to maximize that so you can see everything in it. So let's do a little bit of adding some more interesting dependencies. So I could, taking this element as an example, if I zoom in a little bit, I can move this, scroll it around, zoom it in. I can grab these and I can start to set up dependencies, more dependencies. I could have done this at the master and it would all come across, but I just wanted to keep it simple and keep them at the stages. So I can say, well, meeting scheduled is got a dependency. I can't have the meeting held until I've scheduled it. And I can't write up this scorecard until I've had the meeting. And now I've got some simple dependencies between those. As well as dependencies, we also have constraints. So we have a number of constraint types in there. So perhaps if I know the meeting's got to be held on a certain date, I can go in and I can add this to give it a constraint date. So if I know it must finish on, and you can see there's a number of constraint types you can have in here. I'm currently on the 3rd, but perhaps I want it to, I know the meeting's happening on the 8th. I can set that scheduling there, and that's now moved it forward. So the dependency between them, but I've forced it forward in the Gantt. I'm sure anyone who's used Gantt will be familiar with these various terms and tools. And when there is a constraint type of any type, it puts a little pin in there to show you that it's a must finish on. It has different symbols. You can just hover over these and it will tell you what they are. And of course you can view it.
What is the impact of a constraint, therefore? What will that do in practice, Jody?
So it forces this particular item and task to end on a certain date. But I can also set other types of must finish on. So I can say, well, it has to finish as soon as possible, or it must start no earlier than a certain date. So you can configure everything to really be stuck on the dates that you want it to be on.
So therefore, if I tried to change a date that was a dependency of, would that therefore not allow me to do that? Would I receive an error if I'm trying to move something that has an impact on a constrained task?
Yes, you can. If once you've got constraints in and dependencies, you can start to trigger what we're calling scheduling conflicts. I'll try and trigger one a bit later on. And we can come in and see what happens there. But yeah, it's entirely possible to trigger scheduling complex, particularly when you get into a complex Gantt. Quickly just say on the constraint types, we have within your grids and within what we call the task log, I can flick to these various other views up here. So I can go back to a task log here and it will load all the tasks. If I use the date scheduler in here to schedule something, when you're doing it in the grid, it doesn't know how you want to schedule it. So it will force it in as constraint type must finish on to the date you set. And it will set its duration to 0 days unless it detects you've already got a duration. And that's important to say because we have had to migrate existing grids over to the new Gantt system. So they'll come in with must finish on to kind of force your existing end dates in. And we've also added another feature, which we've called deadline. So in the previous incarnation of the of scheduling, you were able to sort of, if this is my element, I was able to set the element's end date beyond the end date of its children, in this case, the tasks. You can't really do that in a Gantt. So when we migrated your data, if you did have an element, a stage, a grid, or a gate that had its due date set beyond its children, we have kept that in there for you as a deadline, and it will appear here as a date. So none of those dates would have been lost, and you can then go in and decide, change one of these tasks to meet that previous date. So if I did want to say, well, I want to set a deadline for this scorecard to be written up, which is perhaps beyond how it's being scheduled, you can just simply pick a date here, and I can set that perhaps to the 17th, and I know I've got to have it finished by then, and it puts another little indicator in there. And that's deadlines. As well as this, I can do different types of dependencies, and I can add lead and lag as well. So if I go down to perhaps one of the other elements down here, we do this governance checklist one. I can set kind of a standard dependency here, and you can double click on these or right click on them to open up another interface. So in here, I can see it's got a successor, and you can see it's doing an end to start type of relationship, but you can change these. There's a number of other ones as well to match with what you're doing in the Gantt. And if you want to give it lead and lag time, I can have it start a day later, and you'll see it's moving it out there to give it lag. And if I want to give it let it start a few days before the other one is finished, I just add that as a negative number. And once that's in there, you can do this in the table as well. You'll see here with the successor, it's got -1 day on it. So if you do get used to typing it in as a text, you can do all this in the table, or you can choose to do it in the modal interface like this, or the basic dependencies can be done with that simple drag and drop. And there we have our different dependency types. I can also change durations in here. You can grab the side. I can make this one take a bit longer, and it pulls it out, and it's made 6 days. But again, I can just change that in there as well if I want to. Okay, I'll go back into the grid. I'll try and trigger one of those scheduling conflicts. So if I look up here, I've got scorecard written up with an end date there and a dependency to the meeting held on the 8th. And I'll show you how I can trigger a scheduling conflict in here. So you'll see all those dates have now come through into my grid. They're on the element, they've gone up to the stage, and they've gone up to the grid. If I open up the element itself and I was to attempt to move this end date before its dependency, it won't be happy with me. And I check it to the 7th, and it will warn me that there's been a scheduling conflict, and it actually reverts the change. But it invites you to say that there's more complexity to this task than just simply changing its end date. So it will invite you to open up the Gantt. And then in here, it will explain where that conflict has come from. We know it's because it's got a must finish on. I can't have its predecessor must finish on and then try and set the successor to finish before that. So, and it will always give you a number of choices on how to resolve that. So I can just simply say, oh, that was a mistake, I'll remove it. And it's back to how it was. So if you do one in the Gantt, it'll be the same interface will come up. And if you make an end date change in the grid, it will also warn you and give you the chance to correct it. So like I said, I can move between my different grid tools up here. I can go and see the activity log. This is going to show all those date changes I just made and keep a complete log of everything we did. I can go back to the Gantt from here as well. And I can go into assigning and scheduling and viewing the task list. And this is all the tasks from across all those elements. Just to end on, so that gives you an overview of kind of every feature you've got in the Gantt. I'm just going to go back and show to people perhaps who don't really want to get into the dependencies and all the scheduling that can go with the Gantt. You can still keep it going in a sort of simple way. So I've got like an example Kanban board here. So imagine I'm just dealing with these elements and I'm moving them through a simple Kanban. I can just stick to adding end dates and it will allow you to do that. It will just put them into the Gantt with the must finish on constraint. So in here, I can give an end date of this task to perhaps tomorrow, and it will schedule that, and it's gone up the chain. So it's gone to the element, it's gone up to there. So anything with no children, I can schedule directly in the grid. So I can't schedule this stage because it's being scheduled by its element, which in turn, I can't schedule this because it in turn is being scheduled by its tasks. But if I've got nothing in a stage, I can, in theory, give it an end date because it's independent. And if a element is completable and it doesn't have any subtasks, I can also set end dates on here. So I can set that to the 3rd, and I can set that to the 30th. And you can see I'm just carrying on scheduling as I was before. If you did want to go and view that in the Gantt, it's there. It's just pop them all in as 0 duration with must finish on constraint. So I end up with a kind of a basic timeline instead of a full Gantt with durations and things like that. And I can go ahead and remove those dates as well. I don't have to keep them. I can remove one and change it.
The little diamonds that we're seeing there on that Gantt chart, is that what my migrated grids are going to look like, essentially?
Yes. So your migrated grids will have, because we don't know at the point of migration what duration you wanted to put in. So essentially a migrated grid will look very similar to this. It's a good question. You'll have loads of 0 day, which was felt to be the best way to put them in. And if the task had a due date, it would get forced in as constraint type must finish on, which is then set all the other dates. You can see it there. And if perhaps before migration, this element had a date that was further on, you would see that here as a deadline. And it would be, say, further on there, and you'll be able to see that in the chart as the deadline, which has come there. So it's a good point. I have deliberately left it out to some extent, but these will be recognizable as milestones to people that work in Gantt. So anything in the Gantt, if I go back to my project 2 example, I can set any task to be a milestone, or anything that doesn't have any children can become a milestone as well. So if I wanted to change one of these to be a milestone, well, I can simply set that to 0, and it's now a milestone. And I can still have dependencies between milestones as well. I can do a different one like that. There you go. And there we go. That is the big overview.
Perfect. We have had a few questions come in, Jodie, so I'm just going to quickly go through those with you. So Gemma has asked a couple of questions. So the first being about the calendar itself. So obviously people are asking, are we going to be able to edit our own calendars to be certain days of the week, taking out bank holidays, taking out weekends, etc.? What is the plan that we have for Gantt with those?
Yeah, so we've released our MVP of the Gantt in an upcoming release, and it's very much scheduled in. We give you the ability to create account level calendars. So like you might have a 5-day working week or a 7-day working week, and then you could take out bank holidays or weekends or whatever you want to do, or you could have a 3-day working week, whatever suits you. The current plan is to have those set at the account level in the account settings. And then when you open up an item, if I shoot back to here, I would be able to set any item to use the calendar I want it to use. So perhaps this particular item is on the 5-day working week, and the other one's on the 7-day working week. And then the plan is that they will all work together. So each item can use its own calendar. So it becomes more like a resourcing engine as well.
Would that include the grid itself? So would the grid be considered an item that I could set a specific calendar on?
We plan to bring in, so at the moment the Gantt is at the grid level. So very soon, when we've added calendars and things like that, we'll be bringing it up to the account level. So you'll then be able to view, essentially, if I shoot back, trying to kind of show how it might be. But if you imagine I've opened this up. Some people will have seen this. We have demoed it before. Imagine I've opened this up at the account level. The top of this tree would not be the stage, it would be the grid. And then I would expand it, and then I would see stages, elements, and things like that. So once we're at that level, you've kind of got a portfolio-wide Gantt, which you can then have. The plan is to have interdependencies. And then those calendars will be able to work with the different items within the Gantt and across grids as well, because they're at the item level.
Fantastic. Gemma also has a follow-up question around being able to export the Gantt chart.
Yep. So we're currently testing exporting to PDF. That was the number one. How would you like to export it? So you'll be able to export either the table, the Gantt, or a split view to a PDF, which you can then print or distribute. And following that, we'll do export to CSV and Excel, which will export the data table side of it. So you've got it in a CSV or Excel, and then you can manipulate that and import it into another tool if you wish.
Fantastic. Sophie has a couple of questions. So in relation to deadlines, do they have any actual impact, or are they just for information? Would that cause a scheduling conflict?
They are just for information. They're just an indicator. So you can set something kind of beyond its children was the idea behind it, but it doesn't trigger any notifications. They're all still based around the end date, the due date. So it's an indicator only, just to help you kind of map it out if you want to go a few days beyond what it's being scheduled as.
Perfect. Sophie's company also works very much on elements rather than whole grids in relation to cloning. If they set up Gantt dependencies and durations on tasks within an element and then cloned that element, would that inherit its Gantt?
So yeah, we did debate this. So at the moment, if you clone the grid, then the durations and all the dependencies in there will come across. If I'm in a grid and I use the, bring it back up, makes more sense to show it. If I'm in here and I was to use the quick clone feature here, that will clone everything in there, but just the content. It won't clone durations or dependencies on the tasks. Having said that, though, we do hear that feedback, and it's possible we'll probably consider having a choice in here. So either hold contained dependencies in there. The reason we didn't do it is we didn't want them to have dependencies between elements, and then you clone the element and you end up with two sets of dependencies, which we felt would probably cause more scheduling issues than it would help. But I'm certainly considering if it should be an optional, clone it with the durations and dependencies or don't, and you can make that decision. So yeah, we hear that question, and we're taking it on board.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Just to note, before we get into some more questions, don't forget to vote on the poll. So just pop over to the poll section, guys, and add your votes to that question. It will actually influence our roadmap, so please do so. So the next question we have is from Peter. Could we potentially have a look at a stage gate and how that would look in the Gantt itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I add a stage gate for the startup there, so it works exactly the same. I can add my content. I can add tasks as well in here. We need to add some tasks so you can see what that looks like. So that will now be added to the Gantt. So it's treated very much like an element. You can see there it's on the startup stage. If I go to the Gantt now, in the startup stage, if I minimize all these, we will eventually see a gate. There's a lot of elements in this one. There it is. So there we go. It's at the end there, and it gets its. You'll see that the elements are picking up their primary label color, and they look like little elements. And then the tasks are sort of indicated by this task one here, and then the stage gate comes in with its stage gate icon, and it's there, and it can be it can be given durations as well. And it can be scheduled just like that. So I can say that, well, my stage gate has to happen once this one's complete. And there we go. I've now got a stage gate in the Gantt.
Great. So from Amrit, we have a question on color coding. So if a task has gone overdue, is there any indicator of that within the Gantt itself?
There is not. Currently, no. So in the grid, I can go in and I can set it to display elements that have gone overdue as red or whatever color I pick. So yeah, we'll certainly add that to the ideas going forward. Probably some options of either change the color, have it pick up the rules of its elements, or we can add indicators, a bit like those deadline ones. We could add those in. So yeah, I'll definitely make a note of that one. And then one of the questions in the poll relates to whether you would like to have percentage progress on the items within the Gantt, which was sort of, it wouldn't give you an indicator of if it's overdue, but it'll certainly give you an indicator of the progress. But yeah, thanks for the question. I'll make a note of that as for another potential indicators to go into the Gantt.
Fantastic. I think, Bruce, that's covered off your first question there. So we're just going to go straight into your next one, which is, can you collapse down to just elements in one click, or do you have to go through and minimize things individually?
The one click is collapse all, expand all. So you can certainly collapse all, but then when I go into here, do you sort of mean expand all of those in that one stage? So I can certainly expand them all straight away. There they all are. When I contract all, though, it does take it right up to the stage. It's kind of an all closed or all open. And when it's all closed, it goes right up to the top level.
So you can certainly see the element view per stage. Yeah. So as you can see, what Jodie's done there has opened up that one stage, which takes you to element level. So yeah, I guess the amount of
that would be the way to
and how many stages you have.
Yeah, you would achieve it with collapse all, and then you go into each one. And now I'm just looking at elements and the gates, that particular level.
This is a really good question, Bruce. So if you reorder tasks in the grid task list, What then happens to the order of tasks in here? Do they change in line with that?
They will change in line, yeah. Let's make sure it does. But yes, they do. So meeting schedule, meeting here, they absolutely do. No. So, I mean, it would be a strange order, but let's put that the other way around. So it will pick up. So for elements, it's taking the order here down the stage. So with that one, then that one, then that one. You can see how it takes the order as they come down the stage, and it does the same thing in the elements. And in here now, that's now the other way around. So if you want to reorder them, you do that. The grid, your methodology is where you set the order of things, and then the Gantt will just take that as the order. And then when I'm working in scheduling in the Gantt, I can, temporarily change the order by clicking these columns. But essentially that base order, if I go away now and come back later, that base order is restored.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all your questions, everyone. Really helpful. Jody, would you mind just signposting where people can go for help and support if they do need anything extra on Gantt?
Sure, yeah. So in here, whenever you see a little question mark in Method Grid, you can click on there. Here's all our help articles, complete with videos on how to use the Gantt, everything in there. We've also put up a set of release notes on our blog as well, which will be the first blog up there. And of course, if you would like to come a one-to-one demo, the customer success team are always available. Just get in touch.
Absolutely. So the best way to get in touch with my team is help@methodgrid.com. Thank you so much for your time, Jody. Let's have a quick look over at the poll. We will, okay, cool. We will publish that straight after this, so we will let you know the results of that poll. And as we said, if you need any extra support, please do feel free to contact us. Thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.